Hello, hello. I'm here with Brian today, and he's gonna do a class for you. There we go.
Hello, Marisa y otras estudiantes. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're watching this. My name's Brian, and I'm coming to you today from beautiful Selah, Washington. In front of you here, you can see a map. Now, when people talk about Washington, sometimes people think it's the capital, Washington, D.C., but we are in Washington State. It's not the capital. It's nowhere near the capital. You can see on the map on the left-hand side, we border the Pacific Ocean. Pacific Ocean is over here. To our north is Canada. To our south is the state of Oregon. And the star, the green star on the left and the red star on the right, is Selah, Washington. This is where Eliane, myself, and our family live. Now, Selah is, if I can, there we go. Selah is the apple juice capital of the world. Yes, our tiny little city here is the apple juice capital of the world. Apple juice, you may say, we grow a lot of apples here. Selah is near Yakima, Washington, and we're surrounded by orchards. Orchards are where fruit crops are grown, fruit crops like apples. And we turn a lot of those apples into juice. Not all, but a lot. Now, Washington State is the #1 apple producer in the United States. We produce more apples than any other state. My home state, New York, I believe is #2. So I grew up in New York, and then I moved here to Washington. And in New York, they grow a lot of apples too. But here in Washington, we grow even more. Now, the interesting thing about Washington, when we talk about Washington State, a lot of people might think Seattle. Seattle is the most famous city in Washington, but it's way over next to the ocean, and it's always rainy over there. It's always raining in Seattle. Where we live in Washington and the whole eastern part of Washington is very different. Here it's very dry. We have what's called an arid climate. We live in a desert. Take a look at this picture here. Okay, you can see on this picture an apple orchard here with the apple trees. You can see 2 mountains in the background. Look at this smaller mountain here. You'll notice it doesn't even have grass on it, and there's no trees on it. Why? Because it's very dry. It doesn't rain enough to support those plants here. In the summertime, the sky is like you see it here, blue, no clouds. It does not rain here in the summer. Now on the taller mountains, there's a mountain in the background that does have some trees on it, but that's because it's higher in elevation. It's cooler and it's a little wetter up high. But down here where we live, we are just dry all the time. But look at these apple trees. The apple trees they're not all brown, they're alive. And we live in this dry place. Why are apple trees able to live here, whereas even the mountains don't even have grass on them? Well, it's because of that ribbon of blue that you see. We use a lot of irrigation here. We pull water out of the rivers and we apply it to the farm fields. So these apple trees have enough moisture to grow because of irrigation. Here in Washington State, we have several large rivers that we can pull moisture from. I believe the one in this picture is the Yakima River that flows through Selah. But we also have the Columbia River, which is even bigger. And that is where Eastern Washington pulls all of its irrigation water from, our rivers. So even though we're super dry and very arid, we can still grow more apples in the desert than any other US state because of irrigation. Now, apples, you say, well, you might go to the store and buy some apples and munch on them. Do you guys like to eat apples? Yeah? Well, maybe not very, but relatively few apples that are grown on the tree are used for eating. There are many apples that might be too small. They might have a little blemish on them, a little dent. They might be the wrong color. They might have a bug on it or a scar. And people might not want to buy them to eat. They're not of high enough quality. So what we do here is we use them for juice. So look at here. Here off on the right is a picture of some of the orchards around. Notice all of that fruit on the ground. Oh, what a shame. All that fruit is wasted. When we make juice out of apples, we don't use those apples. If you're going to make juice and sell it, it's against the law to use apples from the ground. So we don't use those apples. Once they're on the ground, they're gone. They just rot. We don't use them. You can see here on the left, this is what we call an apple bin that is full of apples that that workers picked. Now these apples might be for eating, or they might be for juicing, or they might be for other stuff. We don't know. But a lot of the apples that are grown here in Washington State and others are used for juicing. After they're picked from the field, they're transported by truck to the factory. Look at this picture here. This truck is arriving at the juice factory. It opens its back doors and all these apples fall out. Look at these apples. A lot of them are kind of tiny. Okay. There's a variety of different colors in there. They're not all the same. And a lot of them, if you looked at them closely, they might have some blemishes. They might look a little ugly, but it doesn't matter because all we're going to do is we're going to squeeze them and get all of that good juice inside for our bellies. After they're unloaded and they're brought into the factory, the very first step is they have to be washed. Okay, these apples might have dirt on them. They might have pesticide residue on them. They might have bugs crawling on them. Okay, so we got to wash all that stuff off, get rid of all that stuff. And you can see here, apples going down the line, getting washed, getting clean. Now, you might think, okay, then we just squeeze it and it's juice, right? And that's what we use to drink. Well, there's really two kinds of apple juice that you can make. And we'll get into that in the next slide. But here in and around Selah, the apple juice that is made is turned into concentrate. Concentrate. What that means is that most of the water is removed from the juice. So you squeeze the apples, you collect the juice, but then you remove most of the water. And by doing that, the volume goes way down. It's easier to store and easier to transport because it's not as heavy with most of the water taken out. Now, here in the United States, apple juice is actually used as the juice base for most of our fruit juice. You can pick up a bottle of juice and it might say 100% juice and it might be grape flavored or tropical punch flavored or fruit punch flavored. But the majority of juice that is in that bottle is actually apple juice. Okay, if I were to buy grape flavored juice, it would be apple juice with maybe a little bit of grape juice mixed in or a little bit of grape flavor mixed in. Now, you can buy pure grape juice here. They do sell it, but it's very expensive. It's cheaper to buy grape flavored juice. And what juice makes up grape flavored juice? Most of it is apple juice. Now, like I said, there are two kinds of apple juice, and one of them is called apple cider. And cider is my favorite. I really love cider. Remember, I grew up in New York where we also have a lot of apples. But you can only get apple cider in the fall when apples are harvested. What apple cider is you simply take the apple, you squeeze it, and everything that comes out is apple cider. So apple cider is cloudy. It's usually a brown color. It has some apple pulp in it, little tiny pieces of the apple that come out. Apple cider is simply everything that comes out of the apple when it's squeezed. Now, how you get juice is you take that apple cider and then you filter it. You take out the solids, you take out some of that stuff. So even though apple cider is nice and brown and you can't see through it, apple juice is more yellowish and you can see through it. That's because all of the particles, all of the small tiny pieces of apple have been removed. So apple cider is only available in the fall when you're picking apples and it's a fresh product. It has to be kept in the refrigerator. It has to be kept cold so it does not break down. But a lot of people, probably Eliane, like to drink apple cider hot. Okay? Hot apple cider in the late fall and early winter is very popular here. I don't like hot things. I prefer my apple cider nice and cold. A cold juice of cider. But cider, remember, is only available in and shortly after the fall. Apple juice, the filtered cider, which then becomes apple juice, is available all the time, year round. Apple juice can be put in a container and does not have to be refrigerated. It can sit out on the shelf in a store and it can sit there the whole year. You do have to refrigerate it after you open it, but until it's opened, you don't need to refrigerate it. So apple juice is rather cheap, which is why companies use it. And it's used as the base of most of the juices that are produced in the United States. It's also exported to other countries around the world. And more apple juice is produced right here in the Selah, Washington area than anywhere else. And that's why we're called the apple juice capital of the world. All right. So that was a brief presentation. I thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, let Professora Eliane know, and we'll get back to you. All right. Thanks for your attention, guys. Have a great day.
We're gonna be talking to you soon.